The Russian is more studied. It has a certain element of desperation about it. It has the same sort of courage the Japanese had, but it has no religious underpinning to it at all. It's kind of an expedient thing to do. It comes out of a calculation that's made in the midst of battle. And most important, it's voluntary. You know, you're not part of a group of Tehran pilots. There were never anything such as that.
Russia's was a difficult and bloody path to high technology, through revolution, 2 world wars, and Stalin's purges.
Throughout the 20th century, there's always been a tendency in the West, particularly among Anglo-American observers, to discount Russian aeronautical achievements.
It was the Russians who invented strategic bombing in World War I, using squadrons of their 4-engine Ilya Muromets biplanes.
The plane was big, it was huge. In fact, it was the first really big airplane in the world.
But German aces and small fighters began shooting these planes out of the sky. The aerial dogfight was born. With cockpit-mounted machine guns and pistols, pilots in the Imperial Air Fleet of Tsar Nicholas II honed their dogfight skills. They were the sons of aristocrats, their planes mainly French and British models. When Russia's Civil War erupted, a mix of these same foreign planes battled each other in the struggle of the whites against the reds. It was the last stand for the Tsar's Air Force. In 1917, the Bolshevik regime took up the banner of combat aviation, along with a new breed of pilots.
Lenin felt that, like a lot of people did in the 20th century, the airplane was emblematic of everything that was modern. So the Bolsheviks did show an early appreciation of aviation, and later on under Stalin, they of course would showcase it as one of the great achievements of the Bolshevik regime.
Stalin was obsessed with making and breaking world flying records, using his own group of airborne socialists, the Falcons. The most famous, Valery Chekolov, was the first man to fly to the North Pole. But even as he staged these spectacular events, Stalin was ridding Soviet aviation of undesirable elements.
The officer corps was just decimated. And great designers like Andrei Tupolev, who designed all those marvelous aircraft, including the Maxim Gorky and the bombers, he was also arrested. And between 1939 and 41, he was put to work in Moscow in a prison workshop. In our worst moments, we never treated our aeronautical community that way.
Stalin's concept of Soviet technical progress reached its most absurd dimensions with the gargantuan 70-ton Maxim Gorky. It had red wings, 8 engines, and speakers that broadcast propaganda to the cheering crowds.
It ended in ill-fated flight in an aerial demonstration when a smaller aircraft endeavored to do a loop over the Maxim Gorky and crashed into the wing.
The Gorky's demise foreshadowed the start of the First Great Air War. In June 1941, the Third Reich's Operation Barbarossa laid waste to the mighty Red Air Fleet still parked on the ground. It was a stunning blow to Stalin and the Soviet people, who thought their air power was invincible. Russia struck back using outdated planes the Luftwaffe had missed. Brave female pilots flying fragile Po-2 biplanes made after-dark bombing raids on German troops camped outside Moscow.
Quietly, coolly, they approached the target, dropped the bombs, and then got out of there. And so, if you keep this up all night, soldiers need to sleep, right? But then, after a while, regular as clockwork, he's just on the verge of sleeping, and here comes another bombing raid, and it wakes him up. And then they bomb him again, and so it continues all night. And so those girls of ours, the ones that flew the Po-2s, they were called the Night Witches. It's all a matter of tactics, right? Tactics turned out to make all the difference.
The Red Air Fleet became quite good at using tactics over technology. Resourceful Soviets captured Luftwaffe planes, painted over their markings, and flew them back into battle against their creators. They would also take them apart to see what made them so good. Meanwhile, Stalin pulled vast resources from the domestic economy into military industry, moving 1,500 war plants and millions of laborers east beyond the Ural Mountains for protection against air attacks. By the Battle of Stalingrad, Soviet Russia had its own ground attack fighter, the Il-2 Sturmovik.
Sometimes machine gun fire at oblique angles would just bounce off the aircraft. It was very sturdy, very difficult to shoot down because of its resilience. And this is the very kind of aircraft that the Soviets delighted in using.
In the battle over Kuban in 1943, Soviet flyers overwhelmed the Luftwaffe with their improved dogfighting techniques. Led by their top ace with 59 Nazi kills, Alexander Pokrishkin.
Это не только воздушный боец, который мог вести воздух.
He was not just an outstanding aerial dogfighter, a man who knew how to shoot down enemy planes. He was also a great commander. He taught his subordinates how they too could shoot down enemy planes.
Pokrishkin was once asked, having downed 59 German aircraft, why he never used the Taran. And his rueful answer was, I never ran out of ammunition.
By the closing years of the war, all the major powers were seeking faster planes. Piston engines and propellers limited airspeed to 500 miles an hour. Like Germany, Russia had already experimented with rocket planes. But rocket planes weren't maneuverable. They burned straight and fast. A new form of propulsion was needed, the turbojet. The British Labour government in 1946 helped the Russians leap ahead by making them a gift of the best jet engines in the world, the Rolls-Royce Nene. Stalin's response? Who would be so stupid as to give us their best engines?
Once they acquired these engines from the British, they were able to upgrade them, improve them in terms of their metallurgy. They were very advanced. And so by the time you get to the Korean War, they have jet engines that are equal to, or in some cases maybe superior, depending on what you're talking about, to what the Anglo-Americans might have had at that time.
That ever since World War II, the Soviets had been building their military strength. Their threat of world domination was real.
The big shock in Korea was the appearance of a stout, fast, extremely maneuverable fighter jet built by Soviet Russia, the MiG-15. They were flown by North Korean pilots, but their early kill rate against the Americans was astonishing. Now it is known that there were also Russian aces in the cockpits of those MiGs.
The Russian participation in the Korean War, even today, is a shadowy episode. And slowly we're seeing in memoirs and articles and historical literature more candor and detail about what the Soviets did.
На таких самолетах наши летчики в Корее
In Korea, our Soviet pilots flew this aircraft and scored many victories against the American F-86 Sabre.
Среди нас, наших летчиков, да, ну, например, такой я могу